Ooh, thank you. So, hey, Carl, as I'm looking around, I see that there's lots and lots of beautiful trees surrounding this body of water. I'm also noticing that there are a lot of dead trees in there. Can you kind of explain to us what we might be looking at in this piece of the forest?
There are a lot of dead trees up there. There are two little bugs, the mountain pine beetle and the spruce beetle, that um, have killed really millions of trees all through the Rocky Mountain West. And it's hard for us to imagine that forests change because trees live for so long that the forests kind of remain the same for long periods of time. But there are disturbances that happen to the forest, and the beetles were one of those. Now, the beetles have been around for a long time, and there have been outbreaks of beetles in the past, but we had never seen an outbreak on nearly the scale that had happened as it has happened recently. And there were real concerns about how that was going to change processes and conditions in the forest, including with water. The scientists have been studying that question for about 10 or 15 years, and it turns out that while there are changes, the changes are subtle, and a lot of the concerns were probably they turned out that they weren't as big a deal as we initially thought they might be. Some of the questions or some of the changes are that the water melts out a little quicker from under stands that have a lot of dead trees because there's more sunlight. And there may be a few more nutrients in the water exiting the watersheds because the plants aren't using, particularly the trees, are not using as many of those nutrients. But those changes and the processes are subtle and hard to measure. Now, there are some other disturbances that happen in national forests that are a lot bigger deal for water, and one of those is wildfire. When fire burns up a watershed, it burns not only the trees, but it burns that forest floor, that sponge and filter that I've talked about before. And so when it rains on an area after a wildfire, on a burned area, um, things change a lot. There's a lot of erosion. There's a lot of sedimentation. The water is running off very rapidly over the surface rather than through the forest floor. So there can be flooding and debris flows, and there's a lot of muddy water getting to the stream channels all at the same time. This can be a real problem for people like the municipal water providers who are responsible for cleaning up the water that we use to drink and for other uses in our houses. And sometimes the water can get so muddy that it just doesn't work for them, and they have to find an alternate water supply until the forest starts to recover. The Forest Service does a number of things to try to manage wildfires. Wildfires are a natural part of the systems, but certainly hot and big wildfires can cause a lot of problems. So we thin forests and cut trees to try to see whether we can make the wildfires smaller and maybe not as hot when they occur. We certainly fight fires when they do happen. And then following fires, we'll go up and take a look at those burned areas and see if there are some things that we can do to help in the recovery. One of the things that we do quite a bit of is actually dropping mulch out of helicopters, straw, agricultural straw, or wood fibers that we drop onto the burned areas to start replenishing the material on that forest floor and to start giving something that will start slowing the water and keeping it on those slopes rather than rushing to the stream channels.
Very interesting to hear that you're using forest products to help the forest recover. That's fascinating stuff.